A comic from 1980 cost 50 cents. Adjusted for inflation, that's about $1.90 today. So you tell me this, why are you paying $4.99? That's not inflation, that's a hostage situation. For years, we've been told it's just inflation, or the rising cost of paper. But those are lies we tell ourselves to feel better about the situation. The truth is far more brutal and complex. It's not about paper. It's about a multi-billion-dollar ecosystem you've been unknowingly funding. And by the end of this video, you'll see how the comic reader became a key part of the most bizarre and brilliant corporate machine in modern entertainment. We're going to show you how a comic book from 1980, like Uncanny X-Men number 137, sold for 50 cents, while today's X-Men Red can cost 10 times that much, even before you factor in the inflated cost of a variant cover. The first piece of the puzzle isn't economic, it's historic. The comic industry was built on the newsstand model, high print runs, low prices, and the ability for retailers to return unsold issues. It was a mass market, a glorious, chaotic, and inefficient one. According to an article from Comic Book History, during the Golden Age, comics were sold everywhere, drugstores, grocery stores, even bus stations. Publishers made pennies on the dollar, but they made it on millions of units. A million-unit seller wasn't an anomaly. It was the standard for top-tier books like Detective Comics and Action Comics. But this model also meant publishers were taking on all the risk. Unsold comics were a massive financial loss. The entire system was built on a gamble that the readers would keep coming back over and over again. But then a gentleman named Phil Suling came along and created the direct market. Comic shops could order directly from a distributor, cutting out the middleman. It streamlined the process, but there was one monumental catch. The orders were non-returnable. That transferred all the risk from the publisher to the comic shop owner. To survive, publishers had to give the retailer a bigger discount, and to afford that discount, they had to raise the cover price. It was a 1-2 punch that fundamentally changed the business. As reported by ICV2, the number of comics sold on newsstands plummeted from over 40% of the market in the early 90s to virtually zero today. The mass market died. Long lived the specialized market. So this revelation begs a kind of unusual question. Think of it like a dating app. You used to be able to browse a whole crowd of people, and if you didn't like them, you just walked away. Now you're forced to buy a premium subscription and you get what you get. The comic book store is now paying for a service that they can't return. And for that, the publisher says, thank you very much, and just takes your money. This leads to a spicy question. Do you think a publisher cares more about the financial health of the comic book store or the mega corporations they're a part of? I think the answer is obvious, but I want to hear your opinion about that. Let me know what you think in the comments below. So the shift from a mass market to a specialized market definitely had its impact, but that's just the history. The real shock comes when you look at how a comic is actually made. The production pipeline is a financial black hole. Creative team, including the writers and the artists, are freelancers, and they're expensive. According to a 2018 survey by the Graphic Artists Guild, a mid-tier writer can get about $150 per page. Now that's back then, and a lot has changed since then, so those numbers are probably lower in some cases, higher maybe in a few others. A penciler, they're the most labor intensive, so they can get $200 per page, maybe. The inker, who adds the definition, gets $130 a page, the colorist, $100, and the letterer, the unsung hero, about $50 per page. For a standard 20-page comic, you're already looking at a creative cost of over $10,000. And remember, that's just a single issue. A full 6-issue story arc, we're talking $60,000 in creative fees alone, and that's before the book even goes to print. Now, these numbers are not the same across all publishers. They certainly do not apply if you are an independent creator and you hire somebody, but these are averages that at least we can build from based upon survey data. But wait, that's just the freelancers. We haven't even talked about the overhead. You're paying for the salaries of every editor, assistant editor, and marketing guru. A report from Publishers Weekly estimates an editor's salary can range from anywhere between $42,000 to $92,000 a year. That's a fixed cost that has to be recovered by the sales of every single comic. But here's the real twist, the cost of using the intellectual property or IP. Marvel is a subsidiary of Disney. DC is a subsidiary of Warner Brothers Discovery, and that may change in the coming year. A portion of every comic sale is a licensing fee, an internal cost to use the character. A 2022 analysis from a financial report shows that Disney's licensing revenue from all its brands, including Marvel, exceeds $2 billion. That's billion with a B. The comic is no longer its own business. It's a division of a larger one. So a comic book is not just a book, it's a marketing cost. And that marketing cost is a drop in the ocean compared to the rivers of cash that flow from merchandise, theme parks, and movie tickets. Now that's everything that goes into the creation and the legality of the comic itself, but now you have the physical product too. The industry has moved away from cheap newsprint to higher quality glossy paper. According to print house estimates, the cost to print a comic can be anywhere from $1.50 to $3 depending on the print run, and that's before it even gets on a truck. But who really gets a piece of the $4.99? The publisher sells the comic to the distributor, who then sells it to the comic shop, and each step is a serious markup. The publisher sells the comic to the distributor at 50% discount. They make their profit after paying the creative team and their overhead. The distributor, like the now monopolistic Diamond Comic distributors, takes a massive cut, often as high as 50 to 60% for the cover price, as confirmed by an article from Forbes, and the retailer, they buy it from the distributor at a 40 to 50% discount. That's their margin to pay rent, staff, and keep the lights on. It's basically everybody taxing each other all at the same time, fighting for margin scraps. With the direct market, publishers no longer needed to appeal to the masses. They now publish for a smaller, more dedicated group of collectors. The comic is no longer a mass market commodity, it's a high-end niche collectible. The biggest symptoms of this? The variant cover. Publishers use retailer incentives, forcing comic shops to overorder on standard issues just to qualify for one rare, more valuable variant. For example, a store might have to order 50 copies of a $4.99 comic just to get one valuable comic that's a 1 in 50 variant. This practice pushes print runs and guarantees sales for the publisher while driving up the average cost for the retailer. The variant cover isn't just a bonus, it's the primary product, and the standard issue is just a vehicle to unlock the profitable collectible. This isn't a new phenomenon. We saw a similar speculator boom in the 90s when titles like The Death of Superman sold millions of copies because of limited edition black bags and multiple variants. Publishers learned then that they can sell you a single story 50 different ways, and they've only gotten better at it. Of course, all these systems, they bear consequences. This is why so many casual readers now, quote unquote, wait for the trade or read digitally. The single issue has become an expensive preview of a story they can buy later in a more cost-effective format. The single issue isn't for you, the casual reader, it's for you, the dedicated collector. The trade paperback, on the other hand, is the new newsstand model. It's cheaper, more accessible, and provides a complete story. As a report from The Hollywood Reporter confirms, digital comic sales continue to rise, appealing to a different demographic of reader entirely. One who wants the story without the sticker shock or the clutter of 100 variant covers. It's a two-tiered system for a two-tiered audience. But the real reason your comic costs so much is bigger than all of this. It's a concept far bigger than the comic itself. The comic book is no longer the final product. It's a promotional asset for something much, much more profitable, the intellectual property. The comic book is a necessary investment in maintaining an IP that can generate billions in revenue across other media. The high costs of modern superhero movies, often with budgets of $200 to $300 million, are indirectly baked into the price of your comic. The comic's purpose is to feed the content engine. A great example, Captain America Civil War was inspired by a comic book story, and that film alone grossed over $1 billion worldwide. The comic has the cheap R&D, the film was the payoff. The comic book industry is the think tank for Hollywood, and you're paying for a seat on the board. And this has also created a global talent war. The success of superhero movies and video games has created a high demand for comic writers and artists. Their freelance rates within the comic industry itself have skyrocketed because they are now competing for talent that extends far beyond the traditional comic book market. Look at creators like Brian Michael Bendis, who developed the Ultimate Spider-Man series for Marvel before signing a massive exclusive deal with DC. Or Mark Miller, whose creator-owned comics like Kick-Ass and Kingsman were turned into multi-million-dollar film franchises. Their work on a comic became a stepping stone to a much more lucrative deal. The money a talented artist can make on a movie storyboard far outweighs what they can make on a comic page. So the comic price has to rise just to keep a fraction of the talent pool happy. So you see, Your $4.99 isn't for the paper and the ink, and anyone who gives you that as an excuse is telling you a fib. It's to help pay for a blockbuster movie, a new streaming series, and a global marketing campaign. The comic book is a small, necessary expense in a multi-billion-dollar ecosystem. The sticker shock you feel isn't just one factor, it's a perfect storm of a multi-tiered distribution model, a specialized market, and the transformation of a simple story into a crucial yet small part of a global entertainment brand. The comic book is no longer cheap entertainment for the masses. It's become a luxury collectible priced for the dedicated fan who understands that they are not just buying a story, but are actively supporting a creative pipeline that fuels a global entertainment brand. It's a nuanced and a very complex business, and the companies that own these IPs have done an incredible job of making you feel like you're part of something bigger, all while you pay a premium for what used to be a 50-cent habit. If you found this deep dive into the comic book industry as fascinating as I do, and you want to see more content that gets to the truth behind the headlines, hit that subscribe button. It's free, and it helps me keep digging into these topics for you. Now, go read comics, but read wisely. I'll see you next time for more Comical Opinions.